Here we are. It's game time, as we say, from the locker room. I've got NFL three-time Coach of the Year Mike Smith with me, and we clearly have a really distinguished guest with us to talk something that's a little bit different, and that's golf. You wouldn't think of golf as a sport with teamwork, but Mike Hulbert, former PGA player. I think he probably made more cuts than just about anybody. Won 3 times on the tour, but I think one of those guys that is really so well thought of on the PGA ranks, and glad to have him here. So, Coach Smith, why don't you get this thing going and talk to Mike a little bit about his career, and of course his 3 appearances as one of the assistant captains of the Ryder Cup. So I think a lot of great things can come out of this discussion.
Oh, I'm looking forward to talking with Mike. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Coach.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us today. And, everybody thinks of golf as a individual sport, but there are times during the season and throughout periods of 2 or 3 years, golf becomes a team game. And I think that's a real interesting dynamic from a coaching point. And I know that you've been involved in 3 of them. Tell me a little bit, and tell the listeners a little bit about the different dynamic that you have going from competing against your teammates to win, to now have to come together and form a team and put together a game plan to win the Ryder Cup.
Well, it is very interesting, Coach, and we only get to do it, as far as a Ryder Cup standpoint, every 2 years, and then every year there's a President's Cup. I mean, every other year it's a President's Cup, so we only have 1 team event per year, and to me, that's not quite enough. But it's, as everybody knows, it's turned out to be a huge deal, a big deal. People say that the Europeans, they're into it more than we are. That's not the case. I mean, I've been in the locker room. I've been with these guys 3 different occasions. I mean, they are flat into it. The hardest thing from our standpoint being, not that I've been a captain, but the assistant captain is, we've got 12 of the top players in the world playing on our team. I mean, most of them are in the top 25. So numbers-wise, it always looks like we should beat the crap out of them. But that's not the case. We are playing golf, and, we're as hungry as they are. But the hardest part is pairing these guys together. Everybody respects each other's game so well that you're almost afraid to, if go ask them, what this putt's going to do. I mean, going back in time, if I was paired with Tiger Woods, I'd ask him every single time to come and read a putt or help me read a putt. But sometimes they have so much respect for each other. But getting back that situation, and I think we'll turn things around here. We haven't done very well here in the last 10 or 12 years. I'm not going to tell you what my record is with the 3 teams, but it's not good. That's the best time. Those weeks are the best time of my career, for sure. And I was honored. The very first one I did with Curtis Strange in 2001, I was the only assistant. To me, that's still my highlight of my career, is getting picked as an assistant captain, the only assistant captain on that 2001 team.
Yeah, Mike, I've got another question for you. You said in the locker room, in a golf locker room is a little bit different than maybe a basketball locker room or a football locker room, right, in some senses. But when you put the team together, are you getting feedback from the players, or is it something that you as an assistant captain and the captain are going to make that decision, or is it more an open communication between the players and the coaches?
Well, I think it's prior to that, we have a lot of communication with the players. I mean, it's almost like we send out a questionnaire, month or 2 months in advance, to the respect, like, who would you like to play with, or who wouldn't you like to play with? And for the most part, you're going to know the answers. I mean, everybody's pretty much, like a chameleon. They'll play with anybody because it's the best, but you never try to figure out. That's the stuff you try to figure out, as you go along. But there is some communication, but it's usually prior to that, or even on the flight over, or, and dinners before. But once the event starts, before practice, even during a little bit of practice, the guys have a pretty good idea. We won't bounce too many things off their head. It's pretty much the captain's and the assistant captain's choice. But we're not going to leave them in the dark.
Yeah, well, I know as a head coach of a football team, and you got 53 guys, you got to make sure that you have that open communication. And it sounds like you guys kind of do the same thing. The other thing that's, I think, is different is really the game that you're playing. Even though at the core it's the same, isn't there some strategy in terms of who you put together, when you have them go out? Is that probably on the coaching side of it? It always interests me watching coaches, even in different sports, how they're handling things. But do you make decisions based on what happened in an earlier round, or do you want to match guys up? How do you do that?
Yeah, you definitely do. You check out each other's games, especially when it comes to alternate shot or versus best ball. So let's example. I mean, do you want to alternate shot? You don't want two bombers, the guys that maybe hit it not so much in the fairways. You might want a steadier, like a Webb Simpson and I'm just throwing out names, a Webb Simpson and a Zach Johnson kind of playing together alternate shot wise. I mean, but you usually go ahead and you do that, and you do that prior. Everybody's going to be at the top of their game, leading into it or that week. But in the same respect, I mean, just thinking what happened a week ago. I mean, gosh darn it, if I was Captain Stricker, who's going to be, at Whistling Straits here, this coming in 21 in the fall, I would put Bryson with Dustin Johnson and just send them out there. It's like opening the barn doors and let the horses go, and just let them go. And I would do that, even though it doesn't look good on paper, but that could be like the ultimate pairing, and just let them play 4 out of 5, or let them play all 5 matches. But there definitely is some strategy involved there.
Yeah. Doc,
let me ask you a question. So, Mike, here you are, you've got 12 guys, and I guess you have 8 playing in the first 2 days. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
So is it typical if a guy doesn't get to play? Is he kind of down, and do you need to really work with them to kind of assuage their ego, or do most of those guys accept it, or is just you don't know exactly what you're going to get when you more or less don't put them out there to play?
That's very tricky. That's a very, very good question, and it's hard. That's the hardest thing for the captain and the assistants, captain especially, because he's the guy, is only 8 guys play on Friday, Saturday, and 4 guys sit out. And you could be setting out a top 10 guy in the world, and somebody that's won multiple times on tour. That's the hardest thing. Now, do I think it's easier when you've got rookies or younger guys that make the team? To me, it's easier for them. They don't really care. They'll be the best cheerleader ever, and that's the way it should be. But I think personally, the European tour, they're a little more stringent on they'll just go up to a guy and say, there's a good chance you might not play till the singles. And you know what? They might accept it a little bit better. It's a little harder for us. Although I really wouldn't do that. We wouldn't really do that. We're going to get those guys at least out there once or twice, everybody. I'm not a big advocate about somebody playing all 5 matches. I think it's just so mentally draining out there, even if you win every one. So, 3 out of 5 is a good thing. But, if somebody's hot, you're going to keep throwing them out there.
What about, clearly, Tiger is, he was so dominant. Is it a problem to find somebody to play with him just because, and not now, of course, but, when he was really, really playing good, would he be somewhat intimidating to his partner? And did you need to really find somebody that could, kind of deal with that?
Yes, actually, he was a tough person to put together. To put with, because he was, the best player on the planet, which is usually it's a little bit of a head scratcher to me, because Tiger's record, how many weeks or how many years he was number 1 and the best player on the planet by a long shot, and his record in Ryder Cup isn't very good. We all know that. Singles, yes, but team, no. He should be able to single-handedly beat those 2 guys, in my mind. But so that's why I was getting back to your first question, or Coach's first question about, I'd tap into him a little bit more. And he is a lot better now here in the last 4, 5, 6 years about that. But before, even a guy like, I've had my best friend is Davis Love, and he's been paired with him. He didn't really know how to, here's Davis Love, a top 5 player in the world. And he's like, not afraid to ask Tiger, but I'd tap into him. I'd tap into him. What do you think about this club? What do you think about this read? Blah, blah, blah. And that's the hard part, is meshing those guys together. But it's kind of like, I don't know, in the football world, it's kind of like, Coach, when, let's just say, I'm trying to think of Julio Jones, top receiver in the league. Is it hard? Let's just say, is he going to be upset if he only gets 5 balls thrown to him, or, Beckham, or in any other team, their best player in the team, are they going to be upset if they don't get the ball X amount of times, or at least targeted that amount of time? Maybe. It's a little different situation in golf, but it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I would think being a coach of a Ryder Cup team would be a very, very difficult chore. You're dealing with a lot of guys that have been very, very successful. And I think you got to put a whole lot of insight into how you make your decisions. And, as a coach, at least when you're running a football team and Doc's running a basketball team, you got to let those guys know, I think, beforehand what your plans are. And I think when you have that open communication, you get it. But Mike, I got to tell you a quick story about the alternate shot. It's my favorite game. I've played it over at Muirfield, and my good friend Paul Johnson and I would go over every year for about, I think, 7 straight years, and we'd play. And I loved it because when I hit the ball in the gorse, I didn't have to hit it out. I said, man, this is the best game. Why don't we do this in America? And, hit a bad shot, and I don't have to worry about the consequence. And Paul looked at me, and he had gorse coming out of his hair, under his hat. He said, holy shit, you see what I've had to do all day? I'm never playing this game again, especially with you.
Yeah, it's it can work on your mind. Even in the Ryder Cup, I remember when I was with a team over in Paris, we got our butts kicked. That's after winning the first morning matches. We were up 3-1. And after that, I don't even know if we won a match. It didn't seem like, but I remember Phil Mickelson was playing in the afternoon alternate shot with, I think with Bryson. And you were able to go out, even while the morning matches were going out, you could go out and practice on the holes beforehand. And I thought Phil was just trying to get his ball in the fairway, for Bryson, on certain holes. And to me, it was maybe a little bit of a mistake, because, you know, just play your game. And I know Bryson just wants you to play your game and he'll play his game. And all of a sudden they were just trying to maybe do stuff that they weren't able to do. And maybe that's what switched Bryson after the Ryder Cup in Paris. Maybe he decided, you know what, I'm going to put on 40 pounds. I'm going to hit it 40 yards farther, and I'm going to get it up there as far as I can, and I'll figure out a way to get it. And look at his success. I mean, the guy's kind of changing the game a little bit in a good way, but it can, once you get over there, I wish everybody would just play their games. And, you know, there's a reason why they were picked and why they made the team. And it was not because Phil Mickelson was putting them on the fairway with irons. It was because he was slashing away and you know, putting it down there as far as he could.
Well, when you did the alternate shot, did you guys, was there more strategy in putting those guys together more so than letting guys go play their own ball and just playing? That's really
for sure.
Right? And
yeah, it is, because let's face it, and you almost want to see how the guys' games are. You might as well put them out there in 4-ball or best ball, where you got, you know, 2 balls going at once. You know, let them play their own game. Alternate shot, you know, you hit one shot, you might be doing a lot more putting than the other guy. You might be hitting, you know, you can strategize it where, you know, on par 5s, this guy's going to be hitting it off the tee. And then, you know, it might be, you know, if this guy's a better iron player, let's put him on the odd holes, which is basically maybe all the par 3s. You want somebody that's sharp in that department. So there's definitely a strategy involved. I got to tell you a quick little story. So we're at Medina, Davis Love's team, and Phil Mickelson and Keegan Bradley. We've paired them together. We basically had our pairing set almost throughout the whole week, and we weren't going to diversify from it. And so the end of Thursday afternoon's last practice round, we had a meeting with Phil. And, you know, Phil knows everything. And he's going to let you know what he feels. And he's a pretty smart guy. So anyway, so we asked him, and they said, and I was sitting right next to Davis, and Davis goes, okay, Phil, give me a good reason why we should put you and Keegan Bradley out first in alternate shot. First first match on Friday morning. He goes, okay, here's the deal. This is Phil talking. He goes, okay. He goes, Keegan is driving the crap out of the ball. I mean, he's hitting it great off the tee. I'm hitting it fine. Both our iron games are spectacular. Whoever we play the first match, he said, we're going to have them 3 or 4 down after about 14 holes, and we're going to close them out. And he said, the odd holes set up perfect for Keegan, and the evens really set up well for me. So after we get done beating them, it doesn't matter who we're playing in best ball. We're making so many birdies, we'll have them beat after about 15 holes. And so Davis goes, okay, you're going off first. So kind of that's exactly what happened. I mean, Keegan and Phil just played their butts off, and they closed them out on the 15th hole. And then they turned right around and beat the crap out of Rory and Graham McDowell or somebody like that. And it was the same thing. It was a phenomenal. And I got to tell you one more story. So first hole's a shorter par 4 and a par 3. And then number 3 is a little dog leg left, about 400 and short 400s. We're already one up. I'm right back in the right on the tee box with all 4 guys. So Phil goes up to Keegan, who always hit first. And for some reason, he's hitting this driver like forever. So he goes to Keegan. He says, Keegan, take it right at the left edge of the green and just kill it. He says, okay. So he gets up and smashes it down the left-hand side. You know, we can't see where it finishes. And so Phil's looking. He goes, I think you're just short of the green. And, you know, our opponents are rolling their eyeballs. They go, okay. And then Phil goes, he asks Bones, his caddy, he goes, what do we got to the front edge? And, you know, now they're really rolling their eyeballs. And he goes 388 or something like that. He says, okay. So he hits a good one. The other 2 guys, our opponents, hit it down the middle. I'm in a cart. I go up there, and there's no cart path. There's no nothing. There's the roughs are a little bit on the firm side. I go up there. Keegan's in the green side bunker, just short of the pin high. And I look back, and they're back there 50 yards. I mean, Rory and somebody else, and they're standing there perplexed. And Keegan flips it out about 3 feet, and they make birdie, and they beat him like 5-4. I mean, I have no idea how that ball got in the bunker, other than it went 390 yards, and that was something. So, but that was a great week, even though I still to this day don't have any idea how we lost on Sunday. We were 4 points up. Maybe you guys can answer that.
Hey, I've lived that in football, and I know Doc has lived it in basketball. Hey, and it happens every week in the NFL and in the NBA. You're up, and you think you got it in your hands, and it goes away. It just happens. And at the end of the day, you never really know what the reason behind it is. You know, whether it's golf, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, you know, there's always compelling stories about the game. And I think that's the thing that's so interesting. And for our, you know, for the people that listen to us and listen to us talk about the different sports, they can connect with, you know, connect with what we're talking about, because sports is life. And that's, I think, what is the great thing about it.
Mike, let me ask you something, you know, not Ryder Cup related, but just as being a PGA Tour pro. I guess in today's world, all the pros have their own team. I guess that can consist of, you know, what, 4 or 5 different people, their swing coach, their caddy, their mental coach, their whatever, you know. Is that the way golf is going these days? Is that it's about, of course, the guy that's actually hitting the ball, but they're putting together teams that kind of work together? And how do you see that? Have you ever seen anybody have an issue where their team has really kind of let them down, or they haven't really directed their team in the right way?
Well, yeah, that's the direction. You're right, Doc. That's what it's been probably the last 10, 15 years. Have I seen it, or, you know, their so-called team kind of get broken up? Yeah, it happens. You know, you get because, you know, unfortunately, you know, sometimes you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you know, I'm not performing. I'm not playing this way. But you can have all the help in the world you want, but you're the one holding that club and hitting it and knocking that putt in. It doesn't matter if from a caddy, your manager, your nutritionist, your fitness guy. I know I'm missing your sports psychologist. I mean, have they helped a number of players? Probably yes. But, you know, I always go back to that old adage, you know, if you were good enough to qualify for the tour, and if you're lucky enough to win some tournaments out there, you know, you must be doing something right. And so, you know, but you can be overwhelmed by that. I mean, look what's happened to Jordan Spieth. You know, maybe he's on this podcast or listening to it, so maybe we can help him out. He's a good friend of mine. I mean, he's a great kid. It's hard for somebody that had his, you know, success 3 years ago. I mean, the guy's won, 12, 13 times and several majors at a very, very young age. He'll get it back. He'll figure it out. I mean, people want him to fire this guy, and this guy. I don't think that's the case. It's, you know, like I said, sometimes you got to go in the backwoods or in the mirror, or when you're by yourself, and you know, you got to pull your pants up and say, you know what, I got to get better myself. I got to get better. Nobody else is hitting the ball. And, but the one thing I've noticed though, out there on the tour, is they're not afraid to change things, no matter if it's equipment. I mean, the equipment is so good. They're not afraid to change. Or back in the day, you had one set of clubs. You didn't get another set for whatever. You were almost afraid to change putters. You were almost afraid to change drivers. Heck, it goes on a week-to-week basis, because people are searching for like the answer. And sometimes you just got to stay in your own lane and figure out stuff on your own. I've had some of my best practices the last 15 minutes before dark on the ranks, before a tournament starts, something clicked, and you don't have to tell anybody about it. And you go out there and you bust your butt and you have a good tournament.
Well, I think that's an interesting concept. I think for anybody that's a coach or a leader or anybody that's in, some type of role, that, change is certainly a positive. If you're always looking to get better, if you just stay the same, everybody you're competing against is always looking to do things better. I guess you saw that in the NFL some, Mike. You just couldn't maintain status quo. You always had to try to figure out how to be better.
Oh, absolutely. And in sports at the highest level, it's probably more important to be improving every day, even though it's probably incrementally, it's not as much as someone that's playing at a lower level, and it's such a fine line. And, as Mike said, sometimes you just got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I got to figure this out, and I got to get this done. Mike, I've got a question for you. I think, coaching as a sport, coaching a sport like Doc has been involved in, I've been, you have your team. Well, it seems like in the golf world, the swing coach might be working with Rory, but he might be working with Phil at the same time. How does that work? And how do those coaches decide, okay, well, I got to work with Phil, and Rory wants me to work with him at the same time? Is there some type of arrangement that they have? Because it seems like it might be a little bit of conflict of interest.
Yeah, that's a great point, and you're right. Cloud Harmon and Butch Harmon, have worked with several top players and still are, but it's hard. It's hard when Brooks and DJ and all these guys are at the same tournament. Like at Augusta, for instance. I mean, it's tough. It's a balancing act. But for the most part, the guys are fine with it. They take each individual as they are. That's why swings are different. That's why one guy doesn't have the same swing. Even though back in the day, we always thought when Butch was working with Adam Scott and Tiger Woods back in the day, and we all thought that was like you couldn't swing the club any better. And they almost looked identical, for the people back at home. And there were several other people. There was a young phenom his name was Ty Tryon. He was out for a couple years, and his swing, Tiger's swing, and Adam Scott's swing, very, very, very similar. But nowadays, each teacher is unique with each guy, and they have different arrangements, I guess. I know they're making a lot of money off of them. I know that, and they get paid very, very well. But in my mind, show me somebody that can teach the short game. That's where it's at, as you know, Doc, Coach, I mean, to this day, I can still wedge it and chip it and pitch it and bunker it as good as anybody. And that's my forte. So that's the easiest thing to teach in my mind. You don't have to worry about going on TrackMan and this and that, but, show me somebody that can down out of a trash can, like your Patrick Reeds and in your, back in the day, like, and Phil, I mean, he does. Those guys, the top players that's one thing about Bryson that's really amazed me, with the length of the clubs, with his irons, how good his short game is. I mean, is with his technique. I mean, he can pitch the ball well, bunker it well, and putt actually unbelievable. He does a lot of things well, but he does it his way.
Well, I think that tells it, and it tells us, Doc, you drive for show, and as we know, you putt for dough, right? And hey, those 3-footers, Doc, that you and I are fighting over and standing over, we need to get working with Mike and have him help us out, because it's killed me. You've beat my tail the last 3 times we've been out on the golf course. It's just unbelievable, Doc.
Well,
I need more strokes.
yeah,
Doc, I need more strokes.
your memory is a little flawed, I think, from who's winning and who's buying hats. I don't think there's any question about that.
Well,
Mike, so let me ask you, and you've worked with a lot of young guys. Right now you're working with the ETSU golf team. And to me, so much of the, a lot of the making putts and is confidence. How do you get these, guys? I mean, did you ever have a time in your career where you kind of lost confidence in a certain aspect of your game? And then how do you deal with that?
Yeah, definitely. You lose it's a hard thing. You lose your confidence. I'm not saying, it could be monthly, it could be, daily. Hopefully it's not daily, but to me, the easiest way to gain confidence is, unfortunately, everybody uses their score as their all result. If, they shot 65, their confidence is high. If they shoot 70 or 71 or 2, it's not as high. Or it might be over a single shot. But to me, that's why the easiest way to get your confidence is to play some games with your short game. When you practice your putting, always practice long putts. I mean, anybody can get a chalk line down there. If your stroke's off, okay, that's different. But for the most part, these kids' strokes are good. Go work on something that's going to get your confidence up by hitting putts from 15 feet to 40 feet. And, you might just make one of those. Don't worry about trying to two-putt. What you're trying to do is work on your speed and your touch, and then occasionally you're going to run those in. That's why these guys win in college golf. It's not because, they drive it down the middle 350 yards and hit it on the green. It's the guy that knocks in an occasional 30-footer, chips in from a not-so-good spot, holds a bunker shot. When they have short irons in their hair, wedges, they hit it in there close. They make these incredible saves that keep rounds going, and keep those rounds going keeps your confidence going. And that's what it's hard, because you're dealing with 17 to 22-year-old kids, and you just try to give them little bits and pieces and where they can keep their confidence up. So it's more of a mental game when it comes to confidence, but you just got to take bits, see what their strong suit is and keep a hold of that and try to get your not so strong suits a little bit better. And for the most part, it's usually the short game that gets you going and keeps you jump started. It keeps you in the game, so to speak. I mean, if it's going to Coach Smith with football, it's like if you go into a season and your defense is a top 3 defense, you're going to be in every stinking game. It just is. So you got to figure out to maintain that defense and kind of bank against them. But in the same token, keep the offense going, because the offense is going to be out there quite often, because there's going to be a lot of 3 and outs because of your defense. But, it's those, I call the short game and special teams kind of the same thing. If you've got a wicked special teams, punt, kicking, guys on special teams, recover fumbles, cause fumbles. It's just like your short game, chipping in, bunkering, hitting the pin, knocking in a 30-footer. Don't be afraid to make a 15-footer for par. Don't be afraid to take a little chance and hit a big old flop shot over a bunker because you've practiced that shot. Don't be afraid. Afraid is not a good word to use in golf.
Mike, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed the opportunity to come out and watch you guys practice. I had really never seen a golf practice in a team setting. And, in my background as a coach, I was really interested to see how it might be different from other sports. And it became real apparent watching. There's a lot of similarities in terms of, coaching football or coaching basketball to coaching golf, and putting the guys in, in situations that are tough and can be mentally draining. You guys were doing some things with your short game the other day. You spent 2 hours on the short game I thought it was really cool how not only were they working individually, but they were competing against each other in a much shorter time period than what they would do on in a golf match. A golf match is 18 holes. You guys had it set up where in 3 or 4 minutes, you would know the result, or sometimes in one shot, you would know the result. So you put those guys in different situations. And I think that was great. And I think it really, one of the takeaways I had from that was you were helping those guys gain confidence, especially in their short game. I was really impressed with how a golf practice really went, because I completely had a complete different idea and envisioned it being completely different. Now, I know you guys go on the course, but I really enjoyed watching you guys work on your skills.
We try to make a good point of that, and 70% of our practice is our short game. Let's face it. I mean, what are you going to be more tired at after hitting multiple 5 irons, 3 woods, 2 irons, drivers, 3 woods, or walking around 20, 30 yards, 40 yards, and just hitting little chip shots and long putts? I mean, that doesn't, that physically would be able to, and most of these guys are in good shape, which is fine, but, we're building up their mental toughness and preparing them. I put them in situations where they're not going to be stunned or surprised or afraid if they have a very tight lie, hard pan lie, they got to pitch it over a bunker, they don't have any green to work with. I put them in those situations. Instead of the one right in front of the green, you can hit a couple different clubs. Obviously, those are the good spots, but I put them in situations, where they're going to have a tough lie, but then they're not going to be scared to hit it while they're out there in competition. And that's all we're just preparing them for that, or at least that's what I try to do. And competition amongst themselves is great. And, and I was telling them the other day, I said, everybody kind of watch each other, your teammate, so if you're out there, if you're at a tournament and you're playing a practice round, if you see something that he's doing not to the norm, maybe his setup's getting a little crooked, go up and say something to him. It's a team game. It's like, we're all in this together, but in the same, so you basically have your other teammates back and at all times. And we can definitely do some over coaching. These kids are good, but we're just trying to put them in situations where they're not going to be so afraid and so scared when they do get in a situation. If they hit something offline, what do I do now? And we're doing a lot better job of that.
Hey, Mike, we're kind of, getting to the end here, and, don't want to take up too much of your time, but I've got one question for you. I've always wondered about, on the PGA Tour, how important is it? Let's say, you play 2 rounds, and by the time you get to the 14th hole on Friday, it's pretty evident that you're not going to make the cut, What is the mindset, because I think this is important for everybody. What's the mindset when you're not going to make the cut, you're not going to make any money, you got 4 holes to play? What's your mindset at that point? Or what do you think the mindset needs to be?
Well, to me, you kind of push yourself forward and you say, okay, this week's gone. I'm not going to make the cut. I've got 4 holes left. I'm, 6 or 7 shots out of the cut or whatever it might be. You kind of start preparing for next week. And to me, if there's something going on with your swing that might be a good time to try some stuff. I'm going to maybe, I'm going to start hitting fades the last 4 holes. I'm just going to basically play golf left to right, or, do something like that. You might do that. And some guys, or you just might shut it down. I'm not saying you don't want to just throw in the towel, but there's always something that you can find in that 4-hole stretch that might help you the next week. But most importantly, you're going to have some time. You're going to have time to practice. More importantly, you're going to have time to rest. And, you still got to rest your brain and your mind and be ready to go. And most of the time it's like, you know what? I didn't prepare good enough for this week. let's face it, they all hit the ball well. Maybe my short game was extremely rusty. My feel and touch for some reason was off this week. So you might grind through the weekend. You might put an extra day in. You might fly for the most part, they'll either go home or stay there and then, go to the next week. And, especially with rookies, some of the other guys have the luxury of jumping on a plane, going home for a couple days, reset and go. But you see guys figuring something out those last 4 or 5 holes that's going to help them the next week.
Okay, we'll probably need to shut this down. Mike, Coach Smith, you've got any last question for Mike Hulbert?
No, Mike, I tell you, it's been very enlightening and for me today to talk about, coaching golf. Again, I think coaching, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, golf, tennis, lacrosse, there's some tenets that run through them all. And it just reinforced it for me. And I hope the people that are listening that maybe aren't golf coaches will be able to take something away from this, because I sure have been able to. And I appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah, you're welcome, Coach.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot I played golf with you two guys, all the listeners. I played golf with these two guys the other day. And believe me, their games are way better than they're putting out to be. And yeah, I actually picked up some stuff from them, and I learned from them. And it's crazy to say, but I actually did. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. Maybe that'll be next time when we come on. But I just love playing with you guys, and we got to do it more often. And I know we can, and we will.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. This was really informative. And, we kind of try to, capture a couple thoughts. And I think that last thing you said was really important. Every leader, every coach, everybody needs to learn from everybody and everything in every situation. You can certainly do that. And I think other, kind of kernel that I got from this was, don't be afraid to change, always strive to be better. And I think if you do those two things, you can learn from anybody and don't be afraid to change. Those are pretty important concepts for every leader. So those are my thoughts, Coach. You want to kind of finalize this?
Yeah, Mike, I want to thank you very much for coming and being on with us today. And I think the one point that I have taken away from this whole thing is that it doesn't really matter what sport you're playing. You need to always be striving to get better, and you always need to put yourself in tough situations. I know whether it's like your basketball coach putting the guy on the foul line in front of the whole team to have to make the 1-and-1 for the win, and that's what I saw. And you do the same thing in football. And I think, hey, pressure on players in practice makes them stronger. And the other thing I took away from it was very interesting. You say how teammates should help teammates. And I think that's so important. And I think as coaches, we need to impress that on our athletes that, hey, we can help one another to get better. And not only will you get better individually, but we'll get better collectively.
Yep. And I appreciate that. I know we only got probably seconds, but there's nothing better when we're at a golf event or team tournament, playing against the best teams around the country, and one of your teammates is a hole over, and all of a sudden you see a teammate put up his hand and pump his fist like, come on, let's keep going. There's nothing better than that amongst the 5 guys. And it doesn't really matter what the guy did, but it's just pumping the other guy up or keeping him pumped up, and that's the most important thing.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Coach Smith. Once again, we'll be back, in a couple more days with From the Locker Room. So hopefully anybody that's listening, go to our YouTube page and become a subscriber. And, I think these are great lessons to learn. So thanks again, Coach Smith, Coach Hulbert. Appreciate you guys.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Talk soon, guys.
Thanks, Mike.